Friedman is playing chess while the others are playing checkers. Today we learned that Brian Friedman has sent over a 370-page document and communication request to Blake Lively's PR, Leslie Sloan. We also learned that he served Blake, Ryan, and 10 third parties. And we learned all this by a letter sent to Judge Lehman today by Leslie Sloan's attorney. And according to ChatGPT, Sloan's attorney is basically saying that the discovery requested from Sloan parties is excessively burdensome, and the Wayfarer parties served the 370-page document request and 18 interrogatories on the Sloan parties. They're saying that Friedman's document requests cover a wide range of entities and individuals, many of which are not relevant to the case. Wayfarer Party's 391-paragraph complaint also highlights the burden this discovery will create. Continuing with such extensive discovery will waste the Sloan Party's resources, especially since resolving their motion to dismiss could eliminate the need for this discovery. Because keep in mind, guys, Leslie Sloan is trying to get out of this. Sloan's attorney goes on to explain to the judge how the discovery process is especially burdensome here because some of the Sloan party's direct competitors are involved in the case, and this will require sharing sensitive business information. If the court dismisses some of the claims, it would significantly reduce the scope of discovery for the Sloan parties. The Wayfarer parties shouldn't benefit from easier discovery rules just because they wrongly included the Sloan parties in the case. Yeah, except they didn't wrongly include you guys. They knew what they were doing. But anywho, the attorney goes on to explain why they were wrongly included. They state that the Sloan parties are not central to the case and that Miss Sloan was unaware of the alleged SH when it happened. Side note, I do think it's interesting that Blake's publicist was not aware of this at all. The attorney also says that Wayfarer parties don't claim she was involved in the New York Times article. They may not claim it yet, but I'm telling you right now, I 1000% believe that Leslie Sloan is involved in the New York Times article. The attorney goes on to say that Wayfarer only claims that she sent 2 text messages, which they incorrectly say are defamatory. The main parties involved, Miss Lively and Wayfarer parties, are not asking for a stay and can continue with discovery. They say the Wayfarer parties have already served extensive discovery requests to Miss Lively, Mr. Reynolds, and 10 third parties. And lastly, this attorney goes on to say that the Sloan parties argue that they have strong reasons for their motion to dismiss and are likely to win. They claim the Wayfarer parties have already admitted this by not defending their complaint properly and instead saying that they plan to amend it. They go on to say the Sloan parties believe that the complaint is deeply flawed. The Wayfarer parties use improper group pleading, don't properly explain their claims of extortion, defamation, don't clearly identify or describe the defamatory statements they claim exist. I'm sorry, if they are saying that Baldoni's complaint is deeply flawed, then what are they saying about Blake Lively's? What is Leslie Sloan so afraid of? Because she's definitely afraid of something coming out.
Does Blake Lively have a smoking gun? And if so, what is it? Bear with me. What could she possibly have in the back of her pocket that could help her win this case? Footage, audio, I'm really trying to understand the pro-Blake crew. Because their argument is pretty collective, right? All of these things add up to this alleged harassment that happened on the set of It Ends With Us. And her credibility has already been shot a number of times, right? For example, this very wholesome home birth video where we don't see any nude parts, she claimed that this was pornography. So when you're miscategorizing a wholesome image with the newborn baby, I don't know, kind of shoots your credibility. But then we have the raw footage from the dancing montage that was published by the Daily Mail where she completely shoots her credibility again because what we saw in the footage is not what she described in her complaint. And then in her amended complaint, she changed the story. We also had the footage of her pulling his body into hers, directing their body chemistry, and her biting his lip, all things that she accused him of doing and then phrased as harassment. And then the biggest one being the document that she signed saying that she was comfortable with everything that happened during phase 2 of production, right? Final phase of production, signs a document saying everything on set following that original January 4th meeting, everything was cool. Which tells us if this is true, big if, that this alleged harassment is true, that the behavior was addressed and corrected and did not continue, which does not sound like harassment because it has to be persistent. So her entire case at this point is circumstantial at best. So let's just say she does have some footage that's in her back pocket or some audio. What could it possibly be? Which of the alleged claims that she includes in her complaint could it be related to? And how does it actually prove her case? I would love to hear a really thought out, intelligent argument from the pro-Blake camp. So to all the Blake supporters, I really want to know. Again, all of this is very circumstantial, so I really want to know, aside from the just wait argument, just wait for what? Like, what exactly could we potentially be waiting for? Like, just, within the realm of possibility, what could we be waiting for exactly? What could she possibly have that would actually prove her claims of harassment? And don't even get me started on the allegations of the smear campaign, right? Because the harassment is tied to the retaliation, which is tied to the smear campaign. Because how can you retaliate against alleged harassment that was never brought forth publicly and then launch a smear campaign? Like, it just, the pieces aren't adding up. I don't know. Pro Blakers, drop a comment.
Justin Baldoni's brilliant lawyer, Brian Friedman, has just given another podcast interview, and it's juicy. Friedman joined the Town podcast, and this interview was so good. There's a brand new Sarah Fraser Show podcast up. I break down this entire interview. It was brilliant for a couple of reasons. So number one, Friedman, of course, who's like a household name, in this interview, he and Matthew, the host, are actually friends. So it almost seemed like this was set up that Matthew was going to ask him every single question that Lively and her team have tried to cast doubt on Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Productions, saying things like, okay, how are you really going to win a defamation case against the New York Times? Like, it's very hard to win that case because the press has, the freedom of speech behind them. And Friedman acknowledges that, yes, it's going to be difficult to win that case, but by the New York Times editing out those emojis in the text messages, and they allege that they reviewed thousands of text messages, that they really altered the story, which was not right. He also says that essentially they gave Justin Baldoni such little time to respond that the moment they dropped that article, they knew it was going to defame him. They knew his life would be over. They reached out to Baldoni on a Friday night on a holiday weekend to try to get a comment. And of course, they used the excuse, well, they don't want to be scooped by another news outlet. They don't want Baldoni to go over, let's say, to the Washington Post and give in a tell-all article. But I really love the way Friedman laid out that he believes he has a case and his clients have a case against the New York Times. The other thing that kind of made headlines, because this interview is only about 4 days old, was, did Friedman refer to Blake Lively as a victim? He basically said he thinks in her mind she is a victim, but that doesn't constitute, like, by law, did Justin Baldoni actually sexually harass her? And of course, Friedman says absolutely not. He also says, look, I can't control how a person feels. You may feel like you were sexually harassed. You may feel like Justin Baldoni made you feel uncomfortable, but did he break the law? Did he actually create a workplace where you were sexually harassed, or did his team really try to damage your career? Loved all of that. Then also Friedman wraps up, and again, I cover a lot of other details on the podcast today. You can go and find the Sarah Fraser Show pod everywhere pods are played. I do a daily pop culture show with what's happening. But the other thing is also Matthew, I love the host. He grills Friedman and he goes, who's paying your bills, Fried? Like, who's paying them bills? Is it Steve Sarowitz, the billionaire? Which, by the way, we all know that it's Steve, but okay. And Friedman just very diplomatically says, everybody that I'm representing is paying their bills. Essentially, Steve. Thanks, Steve. We all need a billionaire friend like Steve. And then Matthew ends it and he goes, I think you're settling, which Matthew, thank you, from the Town podcast. I think they're settling too. And Friedman does kind of leave that door open. Now, he says the best way to clear this man's name, Justin Baldoni, is in a court of law. Let the judge, let the jury, let people see the facts and clear this man's name. But Friedman does hint it's not the only way. So we shall see. Anyhow, more going on with them. Sharon Stone, of course, says that she was dropped from Another Simple Favor, the movie. Now, of course, Paul Feig and that team is coming out and responding to that. You can hear all of it up on the pod right now.
I was quoted, and my name was put in the Glamour magazine hit piece against Justin Baldoni by Stephanie McNeil, alongside what is called right-wing, extremists, Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly. And I want to talk about it. Number one, this whole hate campaign, inside the hate campaign fueled by mommy sleuths. I am not a mom. I run a farm animal sanctuary. I don't have kids. Number two, it's trying to connect those that are supporting Justin and those that are calling out inconsistencies with Blake Lively's story as essentially right-wing. And we're seeing this over and over again. if you start to pay attention, those things that you can likely, allegedly tie back to Blake Lively's side, politics are suddenly constantly involved. The problem with me being quoted in this and me being brought into this right-wing MAGA conspiracy is I'm not American. Number 3, she says that I'm a self-proclaimed citizen journalist. And I think that's really cool. I always wanted to be a journalist, went to school for psychology instead, which she obviously didn't look into. But my job and what I am and what I do is I'm a branding, marketing, and SEO specialist. I work with everyone from startups and entrepreneurs all the way to high-profile public figures. My expertise that I bring to the table within this whole debacle and these lawsuits is branding, marketing, and SEO. So she attempts to take me down a peg, misquoting my experience. Got it. And finally, although I have a lot to say, don't worry, there'll be a lot of content and we're going live on YouTube over this. She says in an IG live following up on it that someone that works for corporate media has less incentive to bend the truth, that those that are benefiting by bending the truth are independent creators. Why? Well, she says because they're getting paid for content and they're getting paid the more dramatic it is, the more they keep you engaged. They are the ones profiting off the Blake Lively drama. She says, I love when people read my stories. It matters to the bottom line of my employer. And then goes on to basically say that she gets paid the same regardless. I don't care whether she gets paid the same regardless or not. The I just work here defense does not help the cause of Glamour magazine in this situation. It does not lessen the likelihood that there could have been someone pulling strings. We're going to do that in real too. So like and subscribe, hang around. But what is so fascinating for me with her response is it's either intentional deception, where she's pretending corporate media isn't profiting off of clicks, isn't profiting off of sponsored content, isn't profiting off of I scratch your back, you scratch mine with high profile clients, or there's a genuine ignorance to what goes on and she genuinely doesn't understand how the industry works. And the fact that my quote was used speaking directly to media manipulation in an article that is rife with media manipulation makes me lean towards genuine ignorance, but maybe I'm just being overly kind. There may be intentional deception at play here as well.